Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a not as late night edition of the Missing Links post game podcast. There we go. That's what we'll call it. I'm your host, Andrew Dukowitz, beat reporter for Zone Coverage. I cover the Lynx, Wolves, and Golden Gophers women basketball. And we have a pretty crushing loss to talk about tonight. I think when you're going up against the number 2 team in the league, as the Lynx were, the Dream are probably the closest, given that the Liberty are not at full strength, the closest competition that they have right now. And without Fee, despite a bad first half, they still gave themselves a chance to win it at the end. I think it got quite a few people's, attention of like, wow, they really could do this. And then they just kind of gave the rope away in tug of war, and Atlanta walks out of there with a home win. We'll get into that and more, as well as taking some fan questions. But first, let's run an ad quick while we're waiting for people to hop in. Well, hello. Thank you, Livestream Andrew. This is Ad Read Andrew. And today we have Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, the presenting sponsor for the Missing Links podcast. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling strives to inspire people to follow their ideas, working with respect and understanding to create a quality, tailored result. Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, located in Blaine and serving in the North Metro area, is here to help you with your building and remodeling needs. I can say personally, thanks to Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, I have a beautiful deck in my backyard, and countless projects that I started, they finished. Get started on your new deck or remodel today by calling Isaac at 763-710-5686. So let's get into the game here. Andrew says over on the YouTube chat, game should be a wake-up call for the Lynx. They beat themselves at times with all the first half turnovers. That's my honest, that's my takeaway. That pod's over. Andrew, you hit it. That is, I'm not speaking about myself. And there's another Andrew in the chat. That's the moral of that. But that's what it was. They came out of the gate and were turning the ball over like crazy. 13 of them, according to ESPN, 14 of them, according to the Lynx own counting, but who knows, because statisticians will figure it out. 13 or 14 turnovers, depending on where you're looking at the box score in that first half. And most of them were just bad. Cheryl talked about it after the game, just pointed out, like, we know what Atlanta does. They did the exact same thing they did to us in Minneapolis. They did that again tonight. They are long, they jump passing lanes, and for whatever reason, the Lynx just really struggled with that tonight, especially in the first half. It showed kind of how fixable that is, though, because they had 4 total turnovers in the second half and just 1 in the fourth quarter. So it's not like the defense isn't unsolvable, right? Because if it was this, masterclass defense that there's no answers to, you'd have those consistent turnovers every quarter, not just throwing the ball away and then all of a sudden, the defense goes cold. That being said, the first kind of quarter and second quarter, it just looked like almost at every turn, it was like you'd look down at the score and you'd think the Lynx were going to be down by 10 or 15, and it's a 2 or a 4-point game. And they just hit shots. I mean, credit to Kayla McBride, came out, had 10 points in the first quarter, I believe, and was just red hot shooting. Bridget Carlton shot a season high 13 shots. 4 of 8 from 3. Like, that was the Bridget Carlton of old. Andrew mentions that in the chat here as well. Nice to see BC get more aggressive. It's one of those things where Cheryl after every game is talking about how they tell BC she needs to get 10 shots. Like, that is the magic number they want for BC, because everything opens up when she's shooting. And she's up to about 37% from 3-point now. She's kind of back to our normal BC. She's been shooting even better since the All-Star break, because that 37% was really kind of just hampered from the first half. So BC's back. I mean, she is hitting threes. I know there was some, and I'll dig into it a little bit more on Sunday when I can talk to the team outside of just like Zoom calls. But she was wearing a boot on the way to the game today. Maybe that could have been why her minutes were a little spotty the last few contests, but she looked awesome tonight. As I said, the Lynx, every time you'd look at the score, they were only down by 2 or 4 though, and just kind of seemed like if they could just figure out that turnover issue, they would take off. And the third quarter, that's what they did. They turned the ball over just 3 times. I want to say 2 of them were like within the first minute of the third quarter too. And after that, the last 18 minutes of play, they had 2 total turnovers. So they cleaned it up, ended up outscoring the Dream by 8 in the third quarter. And then Dream just went on a run coming into the fourth, 9-0, if I'm remembering right, which I apologize. Home away games, I don't get all the analytics I get for home games because the Lynx are very nice to us. But 9-0 run, if my memory's serving right. And then it was just playing catch up all fourth quarter, which I suppose we can probably talk about the elephant in the room, not Ellie from New York, but Courtney Williams. Really weird Courtney Williams game. And I saw a chat here from Katie on YouTube. The Courtney Williams experience is exhausting at times. That is exactly what tonight was. It was live by the court and die by the court, right? There's going to be some games where she is lights out hitting those no, yes mid-range shots. And we are all talking about how Courtney saved the game and won it. There's going to be nights where she has 13 assists and no turnovers, which she has done this season. And then there are going to be nights like tonight where it is just a struggle from the jump. 3 of 14 from the field, 9 assists, but 5 turnovers, no steals. Made quite a bit of just bad decisions down the stretch. I asked Cheryl about it after the game of just, what was that last second possession, right? Like, because they forced the 8-second violation. They do kind of the impossible. I mean, you watch 1,000 basketball games, there maybe one out of those 1,000 you're going to get an 8-second violation on an inbound like possession up by 2. Like, the Lynx do their job. They do the hardest part in basketball of forcing that turnover in that moment. And then on offense, it's, Cheryl said they didn't have a timeout, so she just opted to run a two-man game with Courtney and Lan, or Courtney and Jess, kind of up to court. Courtney got the pick from Lan. Lan sealed great, rolled to the rim, and no one guarded Lan. Cheryl in the post game said Court missed Lan. She was wide open. I just real quick went back and looked at it. Lan is wide open. Like that was a tie game. Courtney opts not to kind of pocket pass it into Lan, does a couple crossovers. To her credit, gets to the rim. Like, she got to the rim and had this opportunity at a floater, and it looked like the ball just slipped out of her hand, which Cheryl, in typical Cheryl Reeve sarcasm, humor, mentioned that it came up well short, which I will agree with. That last second shot came up pretty well short. Inbound, Cheryl, I think, felt like all of us at home. There's not a play call on an inbound like that. Like, what, you get 10 seconds. So it's just muscle memory needs to take over. People need to go where they need to get to. And Cheryl sounded like confused of why their positioning on the court was a certain way. I think reading into that, the obvious answer to that is, why was K-Mac inbounding the ball? Why, was Courtney just kind of in the near corner, and it didn't look as crisp as normal. Now, Bridget said that, I asked her the same question, and Bridget said, we practice it all the time. Like, it wasn't that chaotic. Like, that's an inbound play that we run, which I will say, when Fee is healthy, normally K-Mac or Court is inbounding the basketball. So I'm not going to sit here and die. I'm not going to die on that hill of that was the biggest issue. But inbound goes to Courtney, and Courtney kind of bobbles it and doesn't get the last second shot off. And it's just a deflating loss for fans. You could see it in Cheryl and both Jessica Shepard and Bridget, who talked after the game. You could see it in their face too, of just, this was one that they let get away. I will say, if you want to be glass half full, about this loss. That this is the number 2 team in the league. Like, New York doesn't have Stewie. They are falling in the standings. They lost to Chicago tonight. They are having a tough time. We'll put it that way. Atlanta, on the other hand, is surging. They are winning games. They're looking dominant. They are now second in the number 2 team in offense, number 2 team in defense. Like, they are kind of that next. You got the Lynx, who are like the statistical anomaly, and now you have the Atlanta Dream that's kind of separating themselves. And to have that type of game without Fee, with the turnovers, with Courtney Williams kind of playing on the the opposite end of the spectrum from what we saw in that Liberty game a few games ago, 2 games ago, it's encouraging. I don't know how the team will think about it, because they're not a very big moral victory believing team. But I do think there is some encouragement there of, okay, if we had Fee tonight, we probably aren't going back to back last second place to Courtney Williams. We're probably not having all of those turnovers. We're probably able to shift and play different players a little bit. I think, again, I'm not a big moral victory person either, but I do think you at least learn something out of this game. Of Bridget Carlton seems to be back. She seems to be playing well, didn't look hurt. She was playing defense really well. K-Mac is going to have these moments where she is just popping off. And I just think there's some things that you can go look at and be pretty encouraged. Katie in the chat here just says, if you told me the Lynx would go 4-2 without Fee during this stretch of really tough games, she'd be thrilled. I agree with you, Kate. I mean, that's the story of it. Is, yes, they lost 2 in a row to the number 2 and number 3 seed in the league, but 4-2 without Fee. The magic number is probably 3 games to clinch the 1 seed. I mean, Lynx fans, all of you guys are I'm not going to say you're crazy as often as I normally do. I'm trying not to like paint you guys as like, stalking people outside of their houses type of crazy. But I did get quite a few DMs today about like, Jessica Shepard was wearing the practice shirt of the number 2s. Fee was wearing the number 1 practice shirt. It did sound like she was pretty involved in practice today. I'm penciling in tomorrow that she's back. I think, you got a back-to-back against Atlanta and Indiana. You're probably looking at that as the Lynx saying, we only want Fee to play one of those games. It's just easier to keep her out the first game. I mean, she's already been out. If Fee were to play tonight and score 44 points, then how do you tell her she's not playing against Indiana? I just think it was, if this was the playoffs, she probably would have went, but they don't have to play that way right now because of the lead they built. I'm going to throw us over to one more ad read here, and then I'm going to try and catch up on the chat, and answer some fan questions here before we wrap up. And then we'll be back again tomorrow, believe it or not, after that Indiana game. And we're back with another ad read. This time for Pence Homes, the presenting sponsor of Hitting the Hardwood Network. From the best tools and technology to transparency throughout the entire process, Nate Pence and the Pence Homes team is the top choice for buyers, sellers, and is proud to support you and your home ownership goals. Get started today by calling 612-308-1122 or by emailing info@pencehomes.com. Someday I'll fix that. Kayla's pink hair braids. You change your username so much. I always like double take of like, no, I know who that is. Honestly, most of their losses were winnable games. I would say that's for the entire season. The only loss that really looked like they got kind of spanked was that second Atlanta game, and maybe the Washington game where Court had like 10 turnovers. But other than that, like all of their losses this season have been games where they probably could have just won it if a couple extra baskets went in. But that being said, there literally has never been an undefeated team in any basketball, like professional sport, between the NBA and WNBA. So they have to lose games somewhere. I guess I'd rather have them lose the games that are like pretty darn close and they just kind of, lose it lose it this way, where it's a tough loss, but at the same time, you can at least glean some information of, BC is starting to feel her shot again. Like I said, K-Mac is just a little more streaky this season, but she can still have those kind of hot hands. Jessica Shepard was awesome tonight, rebounding everything. We at least learned something. Andrew Carrington should have gotten more minutes tonight. I think with Dejanay, her minutes are going to be pretty dependent on how Bridget plays. If BC is not playing aggressive, if she's not hitting shots, there's also sometimes where BC just kind of gets like 2 or 3 fouls real quick. And I mean, maybe she gets frustrated. I have no clue, but I think Carrington, when we see her have those like 25, 28-minute nights, it's going to be because something's going on with BC. When BC's locked in like tonight, I think Carrington probably gets less and less minutes. K-Mac's just too valuable to take out of the game, especially with just her kind of quick strike ability. And then you need Courtney or T out there. I think there's an argument to be made that maybe T should have gotten more of those fourth quarter minutes, but T also wasn't having particularly a great game. As simplistic as it is to say this, the solution to this problem is just Fee is healthy. If Fee's healthy, you can run offense. You can run the entire offense through her. You don't need as much of that pick and roll ball handling. And then maybe Dejanay is getting minutes in place of like Courtney or T on a night like tonight, and you just give it to Fee in a post up and let her go to work. Marie, how the heck was Court plus 15 when she kept passing the ball to Atlanta? That's why I don't like plus minus. I really like offensive and defensive ratings, like as a whole, right? So like if you're looking at like a 5-game spread, but plus minus can just be weird because you look at the bench, they didn't play terribly, but the bench plus minus is really bad because unfortunately every time the Lynx went on a run, Court was on the court. And when they started to slip and lose points, it seemed to be when T was on the court. And did they really have that different of a game? Probably not. But I think objectively, just eye test, this was a tough one for Courtney Williams. And, sometimes with Court, it's just going to be one of those things where it's just going to be one of those things where she's probably going to win you a game in a playoff series, and she's probably going to lose you a game in a playoff series, especially when you're down Fee. If K-Mac were to go down injured, if so much of the offense gets put on her, I think it's just, she's a mid-range shooter. Unfortunately, when you live in the mid-range, sometimes those just aren't going to fall. And then what do? Mini me, not too concerned. Nothing is broke that's not fixable. Plenty of time to adjust when Fee returns. Completely agree with that one. And Cheryl kind of broke that down in a different answer that I didn't post on X because Zoom press conferences, media, like audio just isn't ideal sometimes. But that's, I asked Cheryl, I was like, what was you mentioned against New York that they didn't seem like they were ready to play. Did you feel like they were ready to go against Atlanta? And Cheryl said, like, yeah, we played really good paint defense. We played good perimeter defense. They out rebounded the Atlanta Dream, who employ Brittany Griner, who is like 17 feet tall, I'm pretty sure. They got turnovers. They were hitting shots. They were forcing Atlanta into really difficult situations. Like, this was a good game by the Lynx. It's just those 13 turnovers in the first half kind of sold it for them. And then they crawled all the way back to having this chance at the end of the game, and decision making, not hitting shots, ball didn't fall. I don't know, whatever the reason you want to give it. I don't think this was like a horrible loss for the Lynx. And Fee comes back, and pretty much all of the problems they've had tonight were solved. I would say the only thing that, I think as time goes on, Shepard's rebounding is such an asset that I do think she's going to need to get more than 15 minutes a game. And that's such a tricky position for this Lynx team because you got to play Fee 35 minutes. If she's good to go, Fee's playing 35. And Land's probably got to get 30. I mean, she might win Defensive Player of the Year this year. that only leaves 15 minutes for Shep, but she has been so good at rebounding, especially against these bigger teams like New York, like Atlanta. Even against Seattle, I think she had like a really good rebounding game. Like she's so impactful that way that they're gonna have to tweak things to balance it. I know earlier in the season they had tried some rotations with Fee playing small forward, Shep playing center, and Land playing power forward, but then again, it's the problem of being the Lynx, right? Then one of Court, Bridget, or K-Mac has to be on the bench, and that also means Dejanay and T are on the bench. So it's going to be really interesting the rest of the season to see what Cheryl tries with this roster, because I don't think it's going to be just, let's win enough games, then we'll bench everyone. I think there's some value in just trying different things to see what sticks, what looks good, who has good chemistry, just so in the playoffs you have those options, right? In the playoffs, if you're getting crushed in rebounding by the Mercury, you can go out there and say, all right, Fee's playing small forward, BC, you're the shooting guard, K-Mac, you're running point, and we're going big. I also think there's some value in maybe playing a little bit with Fee at center and just see what a BC, K-Mac, Dejanay, Court, Fee lineup looks like. I think we're going to get some weird, wonky things towards the end of the season here, just to prepare for the playoffs more than anything else. That being said, like I said earlier, Fee I would expect is back tomorrow for Indiana. Again, she got upgraded to questionable coming into tonight's game against Atlanta. She was pretty active in practice. And Indiana, the Lynx are catching at kind of the best time to catch them, right? Sophie Cunningham done for the year with a leg injury. They are just kind of decimated by injuries overall. It doesn't sound like Caitlin Clark's going to be back for honestly any of the Fever matchups. It sounds like, which that's another like storyline that maybe is for a different pod, but the traction the WNBA has gotten this year with Caitlin Clark only playing 13 games has been the biggest proof of concept for this league I think that they've ever had. Like all of the new fans that came in last year solely for Caitlin Clark, sounds like a majority of them are sticking around for reasons other than Caitlin Clark, which, I mean, if you're the WNBA, you got to be absolutely thrilled about it. You have Paige going for 40. The Lynx are just a juggernaut. Liberty's interesting. Aces are interesting. Like the conversation for expansion is just makes more sense every time kind of the total arena and TV numbers come out, because this league is exploding. Andrew in the chat again asks, do you think Caitlin will come back this season at all? Man, I don't know. I think it's tough because WNBA injury transparency isn't as good as the NFL or NBA, which you can blame it on the league. You can blame it on not enough people gambling on the league. So there's no like pressure to release these things for people's parlays and their futures bets. Hamstrings and groin stuff are really tough. Like if there's no timetable, honestly. Like it truly is just that you get MRIs, you get deep tissue massages, you do your therapy, and you just have to kind of hope that it comes back faster than expected, or at least on a timeline. And for Caitlin, she's a point guard. She needs her hamstring. She needs her groin area to be able to cut and move. I think some of the bigger post players, Land, for example, I think if she got dung up with like a minor hamstring strain, she'd probably gut through it, but she's not cutting back and trying to hit like logo threes on people. That being said, like I would be kind of shocked if she's back for any of the Lynx games. I think if she does come back, it'll be like 2 or 3 games before the end of the season, more to get her like conditioning and strength up for the playoffs. And then if you're Indiana, you just roll the ball out and hope for the best. Andrew the Goat, a different Andrew. There are 3 Andrews in this that I know of so far. Who would have ever thought Liberty lose to the Sky at home? Yeah, that's tough, right? I mean, especially right after beating the Lynx, they kind of get that monkey off their back for this season. They aren't swept by them, and then Chicago comes out and I mean, Chicago looked. I wouldn't say they looked like great tonight from when I was checking in and watching clips and stuff, but they're they're still a WNBA team. I will say selfishly, like, kind of sucks for the Lynx because we have their picks. So we kind of want Chicago to lose every game, even if it is against the Liberty that they win. Um, do I still think the Liberty can get the second seat back from Atlanta? I don't at this point. Having watched the Liberty up close, I, I I don't see how they can win 2 more games than Atlanta in this final stretch without Stewart. And I saw some stuff that Stewie has been practicing, but she's still listed as out. I mean, if she's out for another 2 weeks, I just don't see how they can claw back enough with that. KJ, question for players in the future. What do they think of Atlanta's court? I can ask them about that. I know courts are weird, right? Because I think some players really like the like flair and flash of it, like Brooklyn's court when it's all black or Oregon's court with the trees and stuff like that. I also know some players just want to play on a normal basketball court. I'll say watching it, I don't enjoy watching games on Atlanta's court. That's just my preference. I would rather have them be on like a normal wood looking basketball court, but there are some people that just love that. I can definitely ask about it though. Um Last question I'll answer here because we're getting to that half hour mark. Who do you think the Lynx will take with their lottery pick? I am just going to throw this out there and plead the fifth because I don't know who's available. I think if it's just this year, you probably go Azzy. I don't watch a lot of college outside of the now Gophers that I will be watching a lot of, but I think you go with the Connecticut kid, good shot maker. She seems like she would fit really well into Cheryl's like team culture. She's decent enough ball handler, solid on defense. I know there's a lot of Lauren Betts traction out there. If you're gonna play for Cheryl Reeve, you gotta be able to play defense at a really high level and not just like a paint rim protector. Like her defensive concept is a lot of switching, and they have this shell where no matter who's guarding on the perimeter, they try and push them baseline and get them kind of uncomfortable. And I don't know how well Betts would fit in that system. That being said, if they get number 2 and Betts is there, you probably just take her. But the other thing I'll say is we don't know who's going to be in the draft because there has been stuff going on with the CBA where you're looking at you're looking at a draft where you're going to have 2 expansion teams that aren't probably going to get an expansion draft because everyone's a free agent. Do you mess with the draft age eligibility to get some more talent in there and give the expansion teams a little bit better pick? Do you mess with the draft age so that it's a 3-class draft and then you just give them last pick of the first round, first pick in the second round, try and make it fair that way? I just don't know what the possibilities could be because the Lynx could have like the first overall pick in a draft that has 3 draft classes in it. And then you could be talking Juju going pro after this year. And if Juju's there, you take Juju. Um, but it's going to be interesting. That's the moral of that story. It's following the CBA is probably going to be one of my favorite things to do as winter turns into spring because it is going to be so fascinating to see how they try and figure out what to do. Um, and Andrew, like you say in the chat here, if there is an expansion draft with 2 teams, the problem for the Lynx is the only player on roster after this season is Ola. So if there's an expansion draft, it's easy for the Lynx. You just protect Ola. They do the expansion draft. You can't draft unrestricted free agents, and then you just sign your players. That's why it's going to be so interesting to see what the heck they do because you can't you can't tell the players, hey, go sign wherever you want. By the way, you might get drafted by Toronto. And you also can't tell the teams, hey, you can do an expansion draft, but the only players that are going to be eligible are the Ola Kosus of the world, which I think she might be good in 3 years, but Toronto's probably not super interested in that. And that's where the league is right now. So I've heard some people guess that maybe they give Toronto, more cap space so they can sign or give them, you can pay someone the max at 10% more than any other team because you're an expansion team. Maybe you give them an extra roster spot so they can try and get somebody extra. First pick or the last pick in the first round, first pick in the second round, so they can get some assets that way. That being said, though, I mean, Portland is going to be an electric expansion. Like, I know it didn't go well the last time, but that city loves basketball and there's nothing else to do there in the summer. Toronto is going to be an awesome expansion city. Like, I could see players wanting to go to those cities to play basketball because they're going to be supported. They're going to have fans. They're going to have not like a Golden State following, because Golden State is kind of, I mean, good grief, did they show out for that team this year? But it's not going to be like you're going to it's not like you're going to be going to the Charlotte Bobcats of the 2004 NBA expansion, right? Like, you're not going to a team that has a former player as an owner and no real infrastructure set up. Like, you're going to cities that have NBA teams. You're going to cities that support kind of I'm trying not to be like political. They're going to support women's sports. Like, Toronto isn't going to make a mockery of it. Neither is Portland. So I do think there might be some players that are just like, hey, I want to go start something in Portland. If you're BC and Dejanay comes back and K-Mac comes back and Court and T all come back, do you go, hey, I want to go play for my home country in Canada? And Toronto is pretty cool. I think they're going to have a shot to get people, but I appreciate everyone who has popped in here. 250 people swung through on X and YouTube. You guys are awesome. I will be back tomorrow after the Fever game. I believe Mitch Hansen of Canis Hoopus and Windsor will be joining me. And then I should have a guest for Sunday's post-game podcast as well as, and we'll have a bonus episode next week. We're also, I'm not going to break all of the news because it's not officially set up yet, but we're trying to figure out, we're a little bit down the ways of setting up a watch party, hitting the hardwood watch party where myself, Mitch, Terry are all at a brewery watching an away Lynx game, doing a live podcast afterwards and just having fun. Because again, you Lynx fans deserve fun. You've rooted for this team without podcasts for long enough. The least we can do in the media is give some podcasts and fun and watch parties, and y'all deserve it. So I appreciate you as always. If anyone has joined in late, this podcast will be posted on YouTube, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Central. And until tomorrow night, go Lynx.